Welcome to Education Station.
Hey.
I am so happy to be here today to share the information pertinent to education. I am so excited about this education podcast. I had a professor at the university level who told me, he says, if you have an audience, you need to mention your credentials. I don't want to sound braggadocious, but he said it's necessary so that you can prove your credibility. I am a published author. This is my book, and I will be mentioning items in my book. There's 18 chapters, and each one of those is one of the stations that we'll be covering today. I have taught pre-kindergarten through sixth grade, 42 years of teaching, but 9 out of those 42 years have been as an administrator. I was an administrator at the elementary as an assistant principal, middle school as an assistant principal, and high school as an assistant principal. So 9 of those 42 years have been as an administrator. And I'm very proud of that because not every administrator has the opportunity to have those 3 levels of experience. I've done curriculum and instruction. Some of those principals have permitted me to do that. So it hasn't all been discipline. And I'm very proud of that. All right. So part of my career has also given me the opportunity to be an adjunct faculty. What does that mean? Well, when you're a part-time faculty member of the university, you are called an adjunct faculty. Those tenured faculty members means that they've been there forever and they have their job forever. But in my case, as an adjunct, I was a part-time administrator. All right. So what did I teach at the post-secondary level? At the university, I taught introduction to education, So many of those individuals who were there to take alternative education courses were wanting to leave their field. In one case, let's say engineer. I had an engineer who wanted to leave the engineering because I guess it was infiltrated already. He saw more opportunities in the education setting. So alternative education students, they wanted to come into education. And I would go out in the field and also supervise them. Then we'd come back on ground and then we would discuss what we needed to do, just like I'm doing here right now. I'm learning as I go how to record this podcast. All right. So at the community college level, I taught as an adjunct faculty 13 years. I was very fortunate. Part-time, I would teach, and then I'd go to the community college level. I would teach English as a second language, and I would teach introduction to education courses. All right. And then at another university on ground, I don't want to mention names, but introduction to education as well. All right. So what we did, we went through those plants, and I would hire temporaries, and we could have 200 one shift, 200 of those employees, and many of them were Spanish speakers. Not necessarily in Arkansas, but not necessarily in Roswell. But what we wanted to find out for the company was what was their education level. So many of them from here, El Paso, needed courses in English as a second language. So we used this tool from California. And so it was a test that paper and pencil test. So we would take one shift, maybe at 8:00 in the morning shift, and my temporaries. And so we would monitor as the students would take the test. We found out, okay, well, so let's go to Arkansas, and let's go to Roswell, New Mexico. Those students turned out to be very low reading levels. But here in the West, Southwest, most of them spoke Spanish. So what we found out after administering that test, so we would go morning shift, afternoon shift, evening shift, overnight shifts, and we were administering hundreds of tests at one time. So then the temporaries that I hired would help me monitor and collect the test, for example, because if you're testing 200 people at one time, you can't be you can't be supervising all of them. So the temporaries would help me in that mode. Then we would put the results of the test through a scanner, and it would give us the levels of English that those students had. So what was the result of that study that we found out from the company? All right, so what happened is most of the levels here in the Southwest, most of the employees were mostly Spanish dominant, and they needed coursework that would give them English as a second language. And remember, I had been teaching at the Alma Paso community, at the community college level, those courses. So what happened then is we offered those employees, or the company offered those employees, an opportunity to take, and they were willing to foot the tuition for these employees. So what they did is they offered them to take coursework. Now, in order for you to learn a second language, there's 4 levels of communication. You have to go through the listening stage at least 2 years. You have to, and you can listen to radio, you can listen to television. Then there's the speaking stage. And so you need to practice by listening to individuals, your mentors, your parents, television, radio. You need to hear the language at least 2 years. So you have 2 years of listening skills, the listening stage, 2 years of speaking, and then you go on to the 3rd level, which is reading. The highest level of communication is writing. So if you read a lot, then you have a lot to write about. If you don't read much, then you don't have anything to write about. All right, so here we go. These are adults. Whether you're an adult or a child, you also have to follow those 4 levels of communication. You're a child and you're babbling, you're listening to your parents. You're a toddler, so you have to listen at least 2 years to the language. So you pick up the Spanish or Korean or whatever culture you're from. From there, you start speaking. So one day, mom says, "Oh, he said mama first or daddy first." You start speaking the language that you heard for 2 years. All right. Speaking. An adult shies away from speaking because of the accent. You'll see many adults learn English. They heard it, they know it, but they don't speak it because they don't have. And when we talk about in the station in the future about linguistics, we are going to talk about where you place your tongue, where you place your lips, where you place your vocals. That will help you understand why it's so hard why you have an accent. So an adult kids don't, it doesn't matter to kids, they don't know. They're not conscientious of that. But adults are conscientious. And so what's going to happen is they shy away from talking because somebody made fun of them when they said sugar for sugar. There's some sounds that don't exist in Spanish that do exist in English. All right, so these adults, and you can read, you can skip the speaking stage. So what were the results of all that testing here in the Southwest? The company found out that they had to offer English as a second language to those employees. And that's going to take 4 years, as I said, listening, speaking. All right. So some of those employees were up in age. There was one plant that had only senior citizens. And so they said, I ain't going to spend 4 years going through that process because I'm already 60 years old. What good is it going to do me? So the company offered them severance pay. Most of those employees accepted the severance pay. I can tell you one student, and it was one of my community college students. She went through all the coursework to prepare her to get her English as a second language credentials. Then she had to still go to the university and get her bachelor's degree. I mean, this is going to take 8 years to learn English, 4 years to learn English, and plus working towards bachelor's. So one student, I can guarantee you, out of the whole, heaven knows how many employees they had, took them up on going to get their tuition paid for. All right, so I say that because I'm talking about my experience in education. And so that's experience with adults in teaching English as a second language. All right, going back to, all right, so let's go back. I gave you my background, where I came from, and now, or how how my forte can be education. So now we're going back now to education station. Our destination today is the classroom. I'm speaking to the newbie, the new teachers who were just hired. So I'm speaking to you. Someone picked you. You went through the hiring process. You took your resume. You're very proud. You had your training. So now it's you who they picked. You now have the privilege, newbie. Excuse me for referring to you as newbie, but you are the new teacher on campus, the new kid on the block. You will be privileged to have access to school building corridors. You have been picked. You are very privileged. You are so privileged to have been chosen as a teacher. So now you're in the camp. You're on campus. You have access to the corridors. You have access to teacher lounges, to classrooms. You have access to the world of education and academia in that particular campus. All right, so you are there as a student teacher. You have been assigned to a mentor, and that mentor knew that she was expecting someone like you to be under her tutelage. All right, so not only, and we'll speak a little more on the mentor and you as a new teacher, but you will acquire a certain jargon. Every profession has a special jargon. Let's say, for example, the police department. They have acronyms that is only unique to them. They will say things like 10-4, DOA, dead on arrival. That's their jargon. You have, what's your 20? They will ask, so that's unique to the police department, for example. So what is the unique jargon that education has? Because now that you've been selected, you have access to the corridors, you have access to the campus. Some of the things that, some of that jargon that you will acquire is, for example, scaffolding. Scaffolding is a term that we use. Okay, so the Bible says you talk about precept upon precept. You lay the foundation, and then on top of that, you make it a little more, I don't want to say difficult, a little more elevated. And so you are actually scaffolding. And that's a term, that's a jargon that's unique to the education field. You will be talking this way. I do, we do, you do. They will say, you will hear things like 3 before me. So the teacher doesn't want the student to go up to her and interrupt her. So she implemented for you to say, when she says 3 before me, that means you have to go and ask 3 of your fellow students to answer your question. And if they cannot answer your question, then you come to me. It's called ask 3 before me. One of those jargons is assessment. You have pre-assessment, post-assessment. The pedagogy, phonics. You will be job shadowing your teacher, and parent engagement. So those are some jargon that you will acquire. It's funny because you're going to go home and use techniques like that on your family. It's funny because some teachers taught all day, and all day they're telling their kids, did you flush the toilet? Did you close the lid to the toilet? And then you go home and your husband is laughing because you told him, did you flush the toilet, hubby? Did you cover the toilet? Did you? And so you become I guess, a robot at home. So did you tie your shoelace or tie your shoelaces? I mean, you're aware of all these things all day. So you bring it home and you have to remember, hey, I'm not a teacher at home. I'm a parent. I'm a mother. There's a company online, and it's the United Teaching, the best in everyone. And it mentions from A to Z all the education jargon that is out there, because it's impossible to mention them all. I just mentioned a few. We said we were addressing the newbie teacher, and I want to call that newbie teacher the apprentice. You're an apprentice student teacher, hopefully to be assigned to a sharp, experienced, top-notch mentor, someone who will share, not withhold expertise. The mentor teacher will be paid to mentor you. Student teachers do not get paid. That mentor teacher will allow you to test your strengths, your weaknesses, while providing feedback that helps you develop your own teaching style. On the flip side is a mentor teacher and expert in the field. To consider yourself a mentor, see to it that you truly have something to offer the apprentice teacher, student teacher. Know that the student teacher you agreed to bring into your classroom is hanging on to every word, every action, every movement that you demonstrate. The example that the mentor teacher, the example that you set, can help this aspiring teacher reach their full potential. On the other hand, student teachers also, or student teaching also weeds out poor teachers. I mean, this student teaching will tell you, do you want to put in the work, or were you expecting that it was going to be easy? It's you will need to be dedicated. You will need to work long hours. Be tolerant. You will need to remain patient while not getting paid. And I'm talking about a whole year, because you would be doing, first semester, you would be doing, you would be assigned to, in my case, when I finished and when I was doing my student teaching, the first semester from September to December, I was assigned to a pre-kindergarten teacher to be my mentor. I was an early childhood major, so I needed to start in the pre-kindergarten setting. And then in the spring, from January to May, I was assigned to a first grade teacher. And it could have been a third, fourth grade teacher, but in my case, it was kindergarten and first grade. All right, so you, the mentee, you, the student teacher, you'll discover that your mentor teacher seems able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. You'll see that mentor teacher is faster than a speeding bullet and more powerful than a locomotive. She must be a superhero teacher. I mean, look at this mentor teacher. She can raise a family. She can feed a family. She can keep a budget and socialize and still mentor a student teacher. Now, that is a one tough person, a superhero. Seriously, teaching is so intense that one forgets they have a family. Sometimes you don't even have an opportunity to think during the day about your kids, about your husband, about what's going on at home, because you are so focused. Teaching is so intense. It's very demanding. I remember walking out of campus and saying, oh my God, I have a family. I have to think of my daughter and my kids and my spouse. So here we are in the classroom. A 30-minute lunch quickly becomes close to 20-minute lunch. Because when you take your kids and drop them off in the cafeteria, that takes time. And then you make a quick stop, a pit stop at the restroom. And so that 30-minute lunch becomes 20 minutes. A high percentage of teachers suffer from UTIs. Why? Because they have to hold it. So you're very lucky when you're in the classroom where you want to stake out where the restroom is, because if it's a distance, you can't leave your kids alone. So you would be asking your neighbor teacher to please watch your kids for you. Okay, so you have in mind that, oh my God, my kids are by themselves, but the teacher's watching them. You hurry going to the restroom and come back. Now, lucky if it's vacant, because many times you have 13 female teachers in one restroom in one particular floor. So let's say you get there and somebody's in there. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Hurry up and come out. So you hopefully wait just a minute or so for that person to. So then, wait a minute, there's the men's restroom. Not that many men teachers. So I'm going to use the men's restroom. All right, so that's your 20-minute lunch. You spend taking your kids to the cafeteria, going to the restroom. It's very demanding. Okay, so let's discuss curriculum and instruction in another. We'll be talking about curriculum and instruction in another episode. What about grading? Grading requires 2 grades per week for every subject you teach. So if you teach 6 subjects, you'll be entering 12 grades every week. You have to keep up. You got to work smart. You can't work hard. Really, when it comes to grading, you've got to work. You have to work smart. Teaching is not a profession where someone goes simply to collect a paycheck. The teacher evaluation system is far too rigorous to pretend that you want to teach. You either teach because you provide quality. That evaluation system is very rigorous. You will. What does the evaluation system do? Well, it checks your curriculum. It checks your how you present the curriculum. If you wrote the objectives on the chalkboard, you have to have that objective every day. So when are you going to do that? Should you choose to accept that teaching role, it's achievable and it's also rewarding for those who truly embrace education. It's like a marriage. If you make it to the 3rd year, you're going to make it teaching. If you last to the 5th year, it's a done deal. You'll be considered a keeper. And so on your way to the classroom, bring your teaching certificates and completion on the way to your classroom, bring your teaching certificates of completion and display them proudly. Later, you'll hang your master's degree certificate and then your PhD certificate. When I completed my master's, my paycheck, after I spent 4 years working on my master's, I only saw a $50 increase in my paycheck. So you ask yourself, was it worth it? You were expecting thousands of dollars. Nope, $50 increase. When you visit a hairstylist, you see their license proudly displayed. The state of Texas requires that you're up to date, that you are qualified to do hairdressing. When you go to a doctor's office, they have posted their certificates because they are proud to show what university they went to, the completion of their, and so they have to have those certificates. Now, it may not be required from the state or from the district to display those certificates. It's a choice you make. But why not? Why not make that known to the parents who visit you? Why not have those up there? Even estheticians, they have to have that on display because somebody's checking. In education, no one's checking, but you have to probably display them. I remember visiting a blue ribbon school, and it was an excellent school. For a reason, they were blue ribbon, but they went a step further. Not only were they agreed to have their certificates displayed, but they also had every teacher produce a trifold pamphlet. And the pamphlet had the teacher's picture, it had the teacher's goals for that year, it had the teacher's accomplishments, their experience listed, and what were their expectations of that year for their students. So that pamphlet included also their certification, their educational philosophy, and that's the reason they were blue ribbon. So remember to find me in the future, look for Education Station. We have so many stations to talk about. Teachers are also surrogate parents. Teachers are chaperones when they go on field trips. Teachers are, you know what, I was going to elaborate on that too. I hope that you could recognize the areas that will help you. When I first started teaching, 1975, I always looked for mentors, and I looked around me to see who could help me. There was one professor, Harry Wong, and Harry Wong is an inspirational speaker. So I would always, I watched and I listened to him and I watched his mannerism. He talks about Harry Wong and his wife Rosemary. They are motivational speakers, or were. I don't know if he's still around, but he had so many good ideas of classroom management, and you can apply those classroom management skills at the elementary, middle, and high school. So look for mentors. They will lead you to good places. So in the future, we will be covering other topics. We will be covering, we teachers wear many hats. We are surrogate parents. How to teach the foreign born. We're talking about linguistics here. Teachers are philanthropists. They give of their time. Teachers are psychologists. And I like to call it, we use a lot of reverse psychology in the classroom. Oh, one of my favorite ones is storytelling. A teacher has many, many tricks up their sleeve. And so you have to have something impromptu. Because you can add, let's say I went to the library one time and the librarian was going a little late in switching classes. So I sat down and I had to do something with my kids because they get restless. And let me tell you about attention spans. For every minute of life, for every year of life, there's 1 minute of attention span. So if you have 5-year-olds and you can keep them entertained for 5 minutes or keep them busy or focused for 5 minutes, then you have to have a transition activity so that they can transition to it. So you either have to have a song or a music in between, and then you can continue 5 more minutes. A 40-year-old individual can sit for 40 minutes for every year of life. So that's important. We will talk about storytelling, and one of my favorite storytellers is Joe Hayes. He's from New Mexico, and one of my favorite stories for him is the gum chewing rattler. Sometimes you can't have a book with you, so you have to have something. For example, I know an old lady who swallowed a fly, but I don't know why she swallowed the fly. Perhaps she'll die. She swallowed a spider to catch the fly, but we don't know why she swallowed the fly. So see, this is a story that I know. There's other stories, but you got to keep the kids really interested. Now, that story will not work for a 5th grader. I remember some keywords. If you hear a student say, I want to kill myself, I want to commit suicide, you immediately have to report them to the office. But one time I used the K word. We were waiting in line, and the kids are very keen to this. We were waiting in line, and I said, okay, guys, well, let's wait. We got to kill some time. And the kids go, oh, what? You said the K word. I said, what did I say? You said kill. I said, okay, you understand what I meant. We got to make up time. So you are a model in actions and in words. And that's an example right there. I used to walk down the hallway and say, boys and girls, let's be stealth, like a stealth airplane. In other words, they don't know we're coming. We got to be really, really quiet. So now we come to our end of our podcast for today. A destination was a classroom. I spoke about the mentor teacher and the apprentice teacher. Our future topics include chaperoning. One of the many hats that teachers wear is chaperoning. One of the many hats that teachers wear, surrogate parenting, teaching the foreign born, linguistics. So we'll be delving into those subjects in depth. And I invite you to look for our next episode next week. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you in our next episode.